I think that the idea of Chinese modernization is, in some respects, relatively new. And I think the reason for that is because China, let's face it, has spent a long, long time trying to catch up with the West, especially since the reform period in 1978, that China's really begun to catch up with the West in a very impressive fashion. We've reached the point since, let's say, around the turn of the century, when China is no longer just catching up, but China, in important respects, not least in the technological and economic field, has caught up or reached the level of development of the most successful countries in the West. So this marks then a new stage of discussion about this kind of question, because modernization has been defined for a very long time as essentially Western modernization. But China's success in modernizing in its own way, in its own circumstances, in its own conditions, has obviously always had very strong Chinese characteristics. Indeed, if it didn't have strong Chinese characteristics, it would never have succeeded. Modernization was shared simply amongst the Western powers. In other words, it was really a phenomenon of the Western world, and in particular the Anglo-Saxon world. And the rest of the world did not only not share in it, it was excluded from it. That was the whole point of colonization, was to prevent colonies competing with the metropolitan countries. So the whole history of modernization until, let's say, the second half of the 20th century was based on exclusion, was based on repression of the majority of the world's population. Now, the hugely important feature of China's modernization is that China's modernization is an opportunity for the world. Its whole approach is different. It's not an old colonial or old imperial model. It's a notion of how, step by step, step in step, China and the developing world, home to 85% of the world's population, can transform themselves and in the process transform the great majority of humanity.